Tonight's Wild Ginger Running live broadcast. I'm here with Adam Smith, injury and rehab. So he says hi, give us a wave, Adam.
Hello, everybody.
So Adam's yeah, so hopefully you can hear Adam this week. So just going to do a little sound check first of all. So hello to everybody who's here and waiting and watching on the live comments and reactions. Adam, how has your day been? And we'll just check the sound.
I've had a tiring day. I'm pretty shattered now. It's been another long day in clinic, afternoon shift. So dealing with, to be honest, quite a lot of runners this afternoon. So I'm ready to go with answers to all your questions, hopefully.
Fantastic. Well, I'm assuming that everybody can hear Adam this time because I'm not getting any feedback saying that no one can hear. So if people could just say whether the sound's all right or not, that'd be fantastic. And I'm going to crack on with asking Adam some questions. So first of all, Adam, I'm really interested to know, why do runners get more injuries than any other type of athlete, it seems?
The tendency is with runners that they just run. Most other sports, whether it's team or individual, there's some real plan to the training schedule. We tend to find with our weekend warriors, our amateur runners, they just get their buzz, their fix from running. So they're just constantly running and not really paying enough attention to the other areas, the strength and the mobility. So this constant overloading of certain muscles repetitively just leads slowly to a breakdown, which comes through with pain and, unfortunately, injury.
So running too much, basically, for runners, repetitive. And so what, as an experienced physio up in the Lake District with your surgery up there, what injuries do you find most common amongst runners?
Again, this is very specific to the runners I see, who are mostly fell or endurance trail runners, ultra runners. We have a lot of Achilles issues, Achilles tendinosis. We have a lot of strained, pulled calf muscles, a lot of reoccurring hamstring issues. So over the seasons, over the years, there's been small tears in the hamstrings, which have never really been rehabilitated properly. So they just slowly move forward into the next season, and the same thing happens again. Lateral knee pain, ITB syndrome, and a lot of glute pain, piriformis issues. They're the big ones, I would say, which would identify with the runners locally.
So basically the whole of the leg, then, we're talking.
Yeah, every but you name it, we can have an issue there.
Have you ever come in and had a runner go, oh, my arm's really bad?
We do. I get a lot of climbers and paddlers and cyclists, so it is varied. But with runners, obviously, you get very much used to assessing people as they walk. I'm a real people watcher. I can sit at a cafe, have a coffee, and you're just focusing on people, and you're starting to identify and diagnose. So usually, as they walk in the room, I've got a very good idea of where the issue is.
Ah, interesting. And so we've seen that there's lots of runners getting lots of injuries, lots of common injuries. So with that in mind, is there sort of, say, 3 or so weekly habits that you could do to prevent the ballpark of running injuries?
Yeah, I mean, do you want 3 exercises or my 3 go-to?
I think 3 things, first of all, and then Andrew Knox asked a question a few weeks ago saying, are there 3 exercises he can do to prevent injury? So we'll do 3 things and then 3 exercises.
The first one, I'd say, and this will be heresy to all runners, they will come, when I say this, their face will be aghast and their jaw will drop, which is run less. Major issue, as I've said, is that people run too much. And that's usually in the quest for greater performance, greater strength, greater fitness, and the magic numbers dropping on the Strava. If you actually back away from that, run less and focus a little bit more on mobility and strength, it's not what you really want to be doing, but in a roundabout way, it may get to you to where you want to be sooner. So for me, it would be drop one of your running or even 2 running sessions a week and put mobility and strength work in. You'd follow that up with the continuity to that. It's not just something that you'd put in a very short period of time for a week or 2. It's basing it on the regularity and the continuity. What I try and instill with runners as well is to focus on on training for injury prevention as being almost a priority. When you're chasing performance enhancement and again trying to be quicker, you tend to find that you lose focus on all these other ancillary training regimes that we've put in place. So trying to focus on staying injury free, which means you'll have the continuity of training, which that in itself will lead to a performance enhancement. So that would be my big one, really. Run a little bit less and focus on the other areas. I would always also secondly advise that you get regular treatment. And I know a lot of runners tend to only have treatment when an injury is there.
Yeah.
But it's being able to, and I know that money's involved, it's a cost. But if in an ideal world, if you could do it weekly, if not fortnightly, even if it was only once a month, to go and see a reputable physio, medical professional, a sports rehabilitation specialist, a quality sports massage therapist, someone who can almost run a regular MOT on the body. So they will look at strength deficiencies, weaknesses and imbalances. They will look at mobility, so movement at the joint. They can identify problems, hopefully, before you've noticed them and before they become a real injury. So we can completely keep countering any injury build-up. I think finally, if we're looking just for something generally, I try and vary the running as well. I've been involved with a local charity, Bray Day, with their 10 in 10, and these are marathon runners who turn up at Bray Day in Ambleside, a charity, and they'll run once a day, every day for 10 days, a marathon, and they train. Obviously, they're running on the road, but they train most of the time on the road. And what I would say to a lot of runners who are just running on the road is try and break it up with some trail and fell running. It doesn't have to be out and out fell sprinting up and down in a race, but just trying to change your running pattern a little bit. So getting out onto a fell, being able to change the cadence, the speed of your running, being able to have a few more hills up and down, to laterally and rotate, jump over stream and rock. You tend to find all of this just leads to a little bit more variety in that running stance. So they'd be my three big ones.
And so with the varying of the running, a lot of people that watch this channel, they're already trail runners. Would sort of cross training come into that as well?
Yeah, I'd quite happily, again, as I say, I'd very much like cyclists, as we were saying, runners, as we were saying before, we could drop a mobility or a strength session in, but you could also throw in cross training. I'm very happy to drop a runner into a swimming pool and get them to do some mobility work. So it doesn't have to actually be a swim stroke, but just some shoulder, thoracic, hip and lumbar and leg movement in the pool. Or as you say, cross training, whether it's in the form of strength training in the gym or just getting out on the bike, cycling.
Brilliant. So there's three things there. Run less and do some consistent strength work. We've got to see a massage person, like weekly if you can. I go once a month because I can sort of handle 30 quid a month. And do the exercises that they actually tell you. And then number 3, vary the running. So do trail running and put in a bit of cross training as well. Yeah. I was just interested in that you said maybe drop 1 running session or 2 running sessions for either your strength work or your cross training there. How many running sessions are you starting off with there? Because I only do 3 running sessions a week as it is. And then like a swim and a cycle and a HIIT session. So is 3 like a good number of sessions to prevent injury?
Obviously, it's dependent on the individual, where they are in their fitness, where they are in their yearly training with any races they've got planned in. So obviously, we can increase them, we can taper out. But you tend to find that the vast majority, I'd say, of our weekend warriors are looking at sort of training, running maybe 3 to 4 times a week. So even if somebody was only running 3 times a week, my professional opinion and advice would be for longevity of running and injury prevention and performance improvement, performance enhancement, so quicker run times, if you ran 3, I would drop you down to 2.
Okay.
It goes against a lot of what runners, we tend to think that if you run more, you'll run better. We often speak, or something I'll use in clinic, a prime example, Mo Farah, incredible runner. He really started to improve and reduce injury when he put into place a lot more strength work. And if we took his a weekly contracted 37 to 40 hour week, a lot of your elite level runners aren't actually running for that amount of time, which people find really bizarre. That you may find that they're only running for 15 to 20 hours, but they're getting regular massage, osteopathy, chiropractor work. They're doing the strength work, the mobility work, yoga, Pilates, run specific strength. So often, to be a better runner, run less, which is really hard. Not
Yeah.
only to understand, but also mentally and emotionally, because runners want to run.
Yeah, we want to see the scenery, don't we? We want to get the fresh air, we want to feel the wind in
Nice.
our hair, all those things. But maybe you do that on the bike.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, with this strength session in mind that we're all now going to do one time per week because you've told us to, Andrew Knox particularly asked this question, a really good question. What 3 exercises would you advise to do regularly to, well, prehab yourself, so to prevent from injury?
So we have to make a distinction between exercises for strength, which in itself can lead to injury prevention, or specifically exercises for injury prevention. So 3 specific exercises for injury prevention. The well-known protocol within the industry now to try and stave off and to rehab back from Achilles tendonitis issue is the Alfredson protocol. So heel drops. So I don't know if you've heard it, if anyone has, but basically you could look at doing 1 set of 20 of these, and you could do it hourly through the day.
Oh,
and you
right.
would simply drive up onto both feet. You don't have to be on a step. You can be on
Like
level.
this.
But that's precisely, you drive up onto the toes, so like a calf raise, go up pretty quickly, but then you slowly lower down to a count of 5. So you're lowering in that the eccentric range, in the lowering range. So that's, as I say, what we've used for many, many years now. It's producing great results in staving off, but also helping rehab. So it's loading in the eccentric range and the lowering range. So for Achilles, that's one thing, and calves I'd put in straight away.
Mm-hmm.
The other big one we see, I say, is hamstrings. So regular hamstring stretching and foam rollering, the combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk for hours, reference foam rollering. A lot of people, does it work, does it not work? There's a lot of people out there arguing it does, a lot say it doesn't. What I tend to find in my experience in pro sport has been that a combination of foam rollering and stretching really works. So for hamstrings, trying to self foam roller, either on a foam roller itself or on a ball, and then trying to do some really good quality stretching as well, and trying to look through that triplanar. So if you were to stand up and take one leg up and put it on a work surface in the kitchen, you'll feel that stretch straight away. But then to lean forward into that, touch the toes, but physically take hold of the ankle and turn the leg side to side. So that in combination with foam rolling.
And is that what you mean by good quality stretching then?
Yes, there's a lot of stretching out there. Again, we can take it, and this is why it's very genetic to the individual. That I could, for you, Claire, we could look at you move, we could film, we could video, we could look at a basic mobility screening, a muscle screening, and it may be that there are certain hamstring exercises which would work better for you than one of the patrons listening. So it's how we try, and again, and that's why working with a professional, I can sometimes identify this. Third one, I'd probably look at some glute work, some glute strengthening work. So we know that we can trace a lot of issues below the waist to weak glutes. So I would look at glute strengthening, and the simple greatest exercise that people can do is a basic bridge, a basic yoga bridge, Pilates bridge, driving through the feet up to the top position with a 5-second hold at the top and then lowering down. And if people were to do that, the hamstring flexibility work, ideally, I'd like once a day. If that's too much, then put it in after the run 2 or 3 times a week. The glute strengthening work, the bridges, I'd put in every other day, so on the opposing running days.
Every other day. I'm just making a note of this because I am actually going to do this. So we've got to do hourly 20 calf raises and lowers, and then
in an ideal world, hourly. But if you did that 3 or 4 times through the day, that'd be fine.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 times a day, the calf raises and slow drops over 5 seconds. Then we've got the hamstrings 1 times a day, stretch them, foam roller them, and probably the rest of the leg as well, just while you're at it.
Yeah.
And then glute strength, do a glute bridge every other day and hold it for 20, 30 seconds.
When you get to that top position, just squeeze the cheeks, the buttocks together, and just hold for 5 seconds. and then lower, but repeat that 20 times.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And you and I are going to meet, aren't we, when I come to Kendal Mountain Film
Yeah.
Festival later in the year. And
So
so we're
we
actually going to
can
do some of these exercises so that they'll be on the channel for anybody to watch
sure.
and try and motivate yourself to do them every day by watching us doing them.
We can put a program together. There's some sort of generic programs we can utilize that I've put together for glute strength, glute mobility. Yeah.
So there's lots of people watching this live broadcast. We've got people. Carol J says she's busy making notes. I'm just going to read out a few of the people that are here so that you could just get a feel for how many people are watching here, Adam. So we've got Di Wilson, we've got Andrew Knox, we've got Robin Townsend, we've got Bran Van Diemen. Oh, an interesting new name here, Gennady Agashkov, Graham Brand, Conrad Anderson's here, Vinny's here, Abby Norman's here, Guy Greatorex, and Dimitri Ascendler. We've got Robert Jordan's here, Antonio Cardinale. He says, hello, it's a really interesting issue. And Robert Jordan's actually saying he has a sports massage every month now and it works. Kev JH says the foam roller is my friend. And Andrew Knox is saying that he agrees with Rob Jordan. He's got one tomorrow. And he's also doing the heel drops as well. John Gardner says run less must depend how much you are running. And he feels much better this year running 30 plus miles this week versus 20 last year, but running more than 50 would wreck him. So I suppose you've just got to find your own sweet spot. And Carol J is busy making notes because she tore her glute medius a few weeks ago, which entirely messed up an ultra. So she's going to see a physio for rehab now. Kurt Steege says hi. Chuck Coffin says hi from Indiana, USA. Hello. And Neve Uchele says hi, everyone. And Sean Lockhart is here as well. So tons of people watching. You're very, very popular tonight, Adam. So we've gone through why runners get injured, we've gone through the common injuries and our best weekly habits to prevent running injuries and those 3 exercises there. So we all know what we should be doing, but we have got some people who are unfortunately already injured, and I'm going to ask some of their questions now. So these people are all patrons to the Wild Ginger Running channel, so that means that they subscribe monthly to the channel, and that means they get priority over asking their questions. So if anybody is interested in that kind of relationship with our experts here on Wild Ginger Running, then just go to www.patreon.com/wildgingerrunning and you can find out more there about how you can get more involved. So their first question comes from Matthew Walker, and this is a really interesting question about adapting your running style because of, let me just find it here, Matthew Walker. He says, you often hear the adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I'd be interested to hear what Adam thinks about the benefits and risks of adapting your running style to something that's more efficient and considered better for injury prevention when you're not currently suffering with injuries caused by running form.
Yeah. The big one that we hear regularly when we see people for many, many years have been running heel striking. So a big, long step out, heel strike, heel strike, heel strike. And it's been common over the last 5 to 10 years for people to try and run with a quicker cadence, which has often come about with a more minimal shoe or a barefoot running. So the foot's trying to fall literally underneath the hips a little bit more with a quicker cadence. And we're trying to chase that efficiency more, if you like. So to run more efficiently, if there's more energy pushing us forward, less leaking out, we're going to get where we need to go quicker and saving energy. I agree to a point with what we're saying there, that if it isn't actually broken, why mend it? If you're not presenting with a regular injury, reoccurring injury, then okay, we're doing something right. So for you, biomechanically, it's working. If you're still with the right training, the right injury prevention strength work, and the right coaching, whether you're just self-coaching, you've got somebody helping you, and you're making an improvement and an increase, then again, why change it? I tend to only look from a strength conditioning therapist point of view of changing somebody's running style if there's an injury that's reoccurring. So, yeah, if it's not broken, there really is no need to mend it. It may just simply be that with a coach involved, they might look at trying to change things a little bit to create more efficiency. So again, it's trying to usually get the posterior chain to fire more. Runners and trail runners, ultra runners, shall we say, our middle of the pack runners tend to focus on quad strength, and they're just dragging through with the quads. And you don't tend to find there's a lot of posterior activation. So we often find if we can get people to strengthen, so the glute strengthening work and the hamstring strengthening work and the hamstring lengthening work, that often allows us to change a little bit with that quicker cadence under the hips. So there's a time and a place for it. But as your patient said there, if it isn't broke, don't mend it. There's only a reason why we want to do that.
Yeah, so if it's not broke, don't fix it. But there might be just an underlying efficiency change that you could perhaps just hone slightly.
Certain little tweaks.
Yeah.
And what you have to realise as well is that you may have run this way for 20, 30, 40 years. So the muscles are very set in that programmed way of movement. So tiny little changes can cause issues. So you can often find with technique change, it feels awkward, it feels laboured, and it may generate some muscle soreness for a while things accommodate to that change.
Good advice. Okay, well, I hope that helps you out, Matthew Walker. We've got a question just going back actually a little bit to the Achilles tendon issues. Masood Kalali says, I would appreciate if Adam has any input and comment into Achilles tendon issues. My main question is about the whole massage of the tendon with 2 fingers in a pinching style. Is that really effective? And then secondly, it's about heel raises. Is that on a flat surface and not a block? And is that something that is recommended, or can it do more harm than good? Thank you very much.
Firstly, I'll just go to the heel raises. We're actually looking at the heel drop. So if it's one Achilles, if it's your right one in particular, it's the problem, I would start you, and it's quite acute at this point. It's very, very painful and inflamed. It's been diagnosed. You'd probably be told, and I'd agree, that you would drive up off the good leg. So put the right leg behind, just hook it behind the calf, drive up off the one good leg, and then you can transfer the weight over and lower down with both of them, or just the injured leg. And you only need to go down to begin with to the ground level. I wouldn't do it off a block to begin with. If you think that with an Achilles tendinosis or itis, it's an irritation of the tendon, then if you're actually overstretching it as you drop below the block, you can create more pain and more inflammation. So starting just going level to begin with, that's the best bet. In reference to the treatment of the Achilles, when you work into the gastroc head, the large diamond-shaped meaty muscle at the top, and then the soleus coming down to the Achilles, you'd have a standard procedure of work in these areas. And as a therapist, one part of it would be we assess the tendon itself and we can feel it. And when we're actually pinching the tendon, we're often looking for scar tissue build-up in there. If we do find some, then a combination of loosening the gastroc, the upper calf, the soleus, the lower calf, and then actually into that Achilles, working into there with pinching movement, as he says, tiny circular movements as well. So what we call cross friction, trying to break down the scar tissue. So there is purpose to it, and it does work, yes. We often do that in combination with work to the plantar foot as well, because we'll be tight underneath, and then even up into the hamstrings and glutes. So we can often find that before I've even actually worked into a calf or an Achilles, if I loosen glute, hamstring and foot, we can get an improvement already by 40 or 50% as we loosen the whole fascia of the area. So there is purpose to it, and it does work, yes.
Can you do that yourself then, that sort of self-pinching and massage, or would you leave that to the professionals?
No, I often say to people who come in, they say, what can we do to help ourselves? And I'll often say, we know foam rollering, hard balls, lacrosse balls, rubber dog balls, but working into an area yourself, if you find a very, very tender area, then after having had some supervision from a medical professional, physio, a sports rehab, a sports therapist, who can show you how to do some work in there, you can get a bit carried away and you find a tender spot, you apply too much pressure and you work away for too long, and people may have experienced this before, then you're very bruised and tender for a day or two afterwards. So yes, you can do it yourself, and there are a lot of self-help videos on YouTube that you'll see. but I would still look at going to seek out that medical professional first, have one or two treatments, and ask the individual, can you recommend and show me how I could sort of self-treat at home myself? So yes, you can do it, but you really need somebody to explain the best way of doing it.
Okay, that makes total sense. And with the calf raises, there's a lot of people suffering from foot issues like plantar fasciitis as well. Would they be good for those, or is it just Achilles that covers?
No, again, that whole posterior chain, you'll often find that a plantar issue will be, a plantar fasciitis is often linked with tight calves, so tight gastroc and soleus, the whole calf down to the Achilles. It might not have developed yet as an Achilles pain, but we often find the tenderness in there. We just have to be careful again when you're doing the heel drops for the plantar. Again, sometimes if you were on a block, that can create a little bit of pain in there. So it would be for plantar fasciitis, we would look at doing some, again, seeking a proper diagnosis. Once it's diagnosed, treatment. There's no easy way to say this. Plantar fasciitis treatment is painful, very, very painful. Therapists often work on a pain scale of 0 is easy, 10 is I'm going to get up and punch you. It's very painful. With plantar fasciitis, for 1 or 2 sessions, you often find you can be working around the 11 and 12 stage for 5 or 10 minutes of an hour's treatment.
And you'll be coming out with black eyes.
Yeah, I can do it quickly. But then, obviously, with plantar fasciitis, there'd be some ball rolling as well, and some rolling on a specific roller, or even a rolling pin, anything that can get into there. So it's something slightly different. But yes, posterior chain tightness. I mean, a prime example, when I run a seminar, we'll often show somebody who's got very tight hamstrings, and I will get them, as I'm chatting and talking and running through the anatomy of the hamstrings, to actually just roll the foot very slowly round and round on a harder of a dog ball. I will then get them to retest, and they'll lower down to the floor and they'll drop lower in the hamstring stretch. We haven't actually done anything to the hamstrings, but by loosening that plantar fascia under the foot, it's had a knock-on effect to all the fascia up through the calf and into the hamstring. So it's a great way of sort of showing and explaining how the tightness just interlinks. The fascia is this wet webbing running throughout that whole chain.
Yeah, so in front of the telly, just get that ball, roll it around your foot, and it could do you the power of good.
Yeah, you mentioned before about foam rolling, with possibly the hamstrings and everything else. Foam rolling and this type of self-treatment is very much like watching paint dry. It's mind-numbingly boring. So I tend to say to people, whatever your little treat is, whether it's a glass of red wine, a beer, or a slab of cake, then put that down on the table. You sat down watching the TV, get the foam roller out, keep the foam roller behind the sofa or by the chair, and on a Monday do your calves. And as a well done to yourself for doing it, have the glass of wine, the beer, or the cake. And on a Tuesday, you'll do your hamstrings. Wednesday, you'll do your quads. Thursday, the glutes. So break it into small, manageable, achievable parts. That's the greatest way to do it.
This is really good. Yeah, I'm just making notes myself because it's a really good way to motivate yourself. So like do 1 per day during the week. Okay, great. So just staying with the foot for a little while here, Robert Jordan, a patron, has a question. He wants advice on some heel pain that he's just got recently. He says it's right in the joint, the heel joint, but it goes away when he has a sports massage. He wants to know if there's anything else he can do, like stretches or anything, or does he just have to live with it?
When he says the heel joint, does he actually mean right at the back of the heel itself, where the tendon attaches on the reverse of the heel?
I'm not sure. The heel doesn't really have a joint, does it? I think Rob is watching, so we'll get him to Rob, if you are watching, then just
if he just wants to let us know. I should think that's what he means, the actual very base and back of the heel there.
Yeah. Well, let's just let Rob get back to us on that one.
Okay.
So Rob, if you are watching, he was watching earlier. He might have been dipping in and out. He also says you can crack walnuts on his glutes. Lol. Just giving him away a bit there. But yes, he's got an excellent sense of humour. So, yeah, so Rob, if you're listening, then just, we need a little bit more information about your heel pain. So is it like right in the heel, like as you step on it, or is it in the joint area as well? So just a little bit more advice on the location of that. Robin Townsend has just come in on the foam rolling question, and she says, how long is it recommended to foam roll for any one time?
If we took one muscle group, I've devised a plan that we took from elite level, and we use with our I call them my weekend warriors, my runners who come and see me in clinic now. If we were to take the calf, I would split it lengthways into 3. So I'd have the upper calf, the middle calf, the lower calf. I would just have my right calf on it to begin with. I'd be supporting myself on my hands, and I would roll. So my bum's lifted from the floor, I'm pushing through, and I would roll for a minute in that top third, just up and down, a minute in the middle, and then a minute in the bottom third. I would then cross my leg over, my left leg over, so I've now created more weight, and I'd repeat that again, 30 seconds at the top, 30 in the middle, 30 at the bottom. I would then come back to the top, and I would start to roll the legs, laterally rotating over, and I would do that for 30 seconds in the top third, then down to the middle and the bottom. I would then come back and just go searching, go looking for areas that are painful. Stop there. The pain you're feeling, it's very much like when you get deep treatment massage. If you're putting pressure, it's my pressure or the foam roller's pressure into a tight sore muscle that's creating the pain. So stop in that area, work in there, apply some pressure, just some slight little movements, and then move on. So for a calf, you would probably find I could have done one calf in 5 or 6 minutes for maintenance work. Even though I'm now telling you what to do, I would say do as I say, not always as I do. I'll often find that I haven't done mine as regularly as I should have done, and I might sit down for an evening and I might roll a calf for half an hour to 45 minutes, and I'll just be watching TV or checking emails, and I'd just be up against the sofa or the wall and just rolling laterally, so I'm not going up and down, I'm just rotating. You have to be aware that if you do that, the day after and the following day, you could have a little bit of tenderness. So ideally for the maintenance work, if there's no issue, you're looking at maybe 5-6 minutes for a calf. You go to a hamstring that's longer, could be 7 or 8 minutes. A quad, you could be 9 or 10 minutes.
So like half an hour of foam rolling and stretching combined per night easily.
In an ideal world, you've nailed it there.
Yeah.
If you could do 10 minutes, 8 or 9 minutes on either hamstring, and then stretching it as well, so you are getting towards, as you say, 25 minutes to half an hour, which today, time is a precious commodity with family and work, so I understand it's difficult, and that's why I often say that taking one of your training runs out during the week so that you can do more mobility and strength work is very, very beneficial to stave off that injury, which, however mobile you find yourself at this present time, the repetitious nature of running again and again, it will eventually catch you and bite you.
That's really interesting, because I'll watch TV before bed, like at half an hour to an hour, and I could easily get out the foam roller and be doing that. So I'm going to actually do that.
Whether it's, as you say, watching TV, people might catch up on the news, literally on a physical newspaper, or they're just scanning through social media or eBay. You'll always find there's 10 or 15 minutes when you're looking at a screen through the day, which is the perfect opportunity to do it. If you work at an office, taking the rubber dog ball, the lacrosse ball, sitting on it on the chair, taking your shoes off and rolling the feet on there, there's always opportunities you will find during the day where you can just keep nibbling away at increasing mobility.
That's great. And I think Kurt Steed has got the right idea here, because he says, okay, I drink a glass of wine every night in front of the TV. Was that right? So yeah.
He's got it.
He's got it in one. Got it in one, Kurt. So we've got Rob Jordan. He's back in the game here, and he said, yes, it's right inside the heel. Does that help you out with a little bit more knowledge there?
He's been for sports massage, and sports massage seems to improve it for a while, but then it comes back, I think he said.
Yeah.
if he's not had a real diagnosis and they haven't picked up on anything, it would be something to explore in a little bit more detail. If he's just visiting a sports masseur, it may be that they have great massage techniques, but their ability to do a series of special tests to diagnose specifically what's going on might not be quite there. It may have been missed. So what I would suggest is, if he's getting real heel pain at that point, it almost sounds, if it's low down into that heel itself, almost like an insertional tendinopathy. So where the Achilles actually inserts onto the bone at the back, it could get some inflammation there. Pump bump, Haglund's deformity, so you can get a bit of a swelling there. It may be that. It may be underneath there. It may be a bursa issue, a fat pad issue under the heel. So again, I'm guessing with those things until I actually, if you presented in clinic with this, I'd have to do a series of special tests to try and ascertain which one of those it is. The fact that the soft tissue massage, when he has his calf worked on, seems to improve it for a while, points to it being a soft tissue issue. And I would say that there's probably some development of an Achilles issue coming on there. So again, the Alfredson heel technique drops that we spoke about, they would work incredibly well. Foam rollering the calf himself, evenings, the hamstrings and the glutes, the whole posterior chain. Some ball rolling, because there could be a plantar issue underneath the foot there as well. So again, it's very hard for me to say, to diagnose in this manner. So there's some of the ideas it could be. But I think what he needs to do is just investigate a little bit further, either with the therapist he's seeing or taking it elsewhere if need be.
Yeah, so that's really good advice in itself. So like, steer clear of trying to diagnose from the internet and from your friends. Go and see a professional who's trusted locally, or take a trip to the Lake District. Go and see Adam, because he knows a lot of things, as we have seen tonight. And then once you know exactly what it is, then you can treat it perfectly. And rehab yourself as quick as possible. So there's you did touch upon this just a minute ago, and it was about sitting at your desk and doing certain things. I want to come back to that in a minute, but first I want to ask another couple of patron questions about surgeries. So we've got two people who are having surgeries. There's George Moss, who's having a hip replacement, and there's Kate Shepherd, who's preparing for bunion surgery. So George is interested in, I would be very interested in Adam's thoughts on returning to running following a hip replacement. It's booked for December the 3rd at the moment. But he's also seeking a second opinion on Wednesday with a different consultant, as he feels the issue is actually muscular. So should we take George's issue first, returning to running following a hip replacement?
Yeah. Again, for the individual here, the diagnosis, again, without seeing him, it's very hard to say. I would always, before any surgery, seek a second or even third opinion. You're perfectly within your rights to do that. I've got the greatest respect for surgeons, but surgeons like to operate. That's what they do. Yeah. And it's not always necessary. It could be a muscular issue. If it's been raised to this point, I'm guessing there's been MRI scanning in there and X-raying. So they've obviously found something that they think surgery is needed for. So again, without seeing them, I don't know. That doesn't also mean that the vast majority, well, I'd say 99% of people I see who are going in for hip replacement, there's a serious posterior muscle issue in the fact that there are imbalances there and there's not a lot of strength there either. So you haven't got the stabilization of the joint. The actual femur sitting up in the joint is not stabilized. So instead of it sitting central up here, it can be front, back, left, right. It could have caused all sorts of damage in there. We don't know if we're just dealing with a simple late stage arthritic condition that's developed over years. We don't know what's going on. For any operation, and again, we take this at pro level sport down to average general public clinic, the fitter and stronger and more balanced you are before you go in for the op, the quicker you'll come out the other side. If the surgeon has a successful surgery, basically you're handed back. He'll come around and see you 2 or 3 days later. It's been very successful, Mr. Smith. Everything's great. Off you go. That is then key. It's the rehab stage. And I've got to admit, and I'm not bashing the NHS here at all, they are struggling massively. They're underfunded and they're understaffed. And we just don't have the capacity within there to deal with giving the right amounts of rehab and treatment. But if you want to return to running, it's possible, but you have to put in a lot of time and effort. There has to be, I would think, a lot of private physio and then a lot of individual commitment to loosening of the muscles works, because the actual traumatic nature of a hip replacement is huge. Everything just shortens and tightens again. So you've got to put the time and effort and the commitment into loosening and strengthening, and that becomes a priority. So yes, you can come back. It's dependent on the individual. I've seen somebody come back and start jogging 4 months after hip replacement. I've seen some people, it's been 6 months to a year to 18 months. And I've got to also say that a lot of people have never got back to it after the hip replacement. And I've got to be honest, that's simply down to what we just said there, that they didn't put the time and effort in. Unfortunately, we have the hip replacement, new hip goes in, part of the hip goes in, and then we think, whoa, we're sorted, we'll be back to it. And that's really the first stage. That's the easiest stage. It's the rehab that's the hard thing. So my advice would be, again, second opinion, third opinion with a surgeon. If you need to go and see other physical therapists, physios, osteos, chiros, sports rehabilitators, get their opinion, get as much information as you can to help make the decision when you go forward. The fact that it's booked in there, ready to go, is good. Try and find out a bit more information first.
That's fantastic advice. I hope that helps George Moss out. Really good. Thank you, Adam. And then, so the next one is Kate Shepherd, and she said she wants advice for preparing herself for surgery. She's having bunion surgery in November and wonders if there's anything she can do beforehand to make her recovery as easy as possible, and post bunion surgery advice too. She says she needs to stay off her foot for 6 weeks, but she assumes she can do like core exercises and strengthening exercises once she feels up to it.
Yeah, precisely. Again, I'm not conversant with the individual here, and what state the foot is in now. But what you tend to find is that a bunion will alter biomechanically the way that the foot's placed. Obviously, toeing off, all the movement usually comes from big toe. So we can have all sorts of issues there. So biomechanically, there can be a lot of tightnesses. That can affect muscle tightness. That can affect up into the calf, the shin, and continuing going up. Say, a problem at the toe or the ankle can manifest 6 months later in a hip or a shoulder. So what she needs to do in the short term, again, is get as fit and strong as we can before we go in. Make sure we've got plenty of plantar and dorsiflexion at the ankle, plenty of movement at the foot, that we've got loose muscle tissue under the foot, the plantar's good, that the calf, are saying, the shin are loose. And then a successful surgery, as you say, be off your feet for a while. So it's just slowly coming back weight bearing and then continuing with that type of work. But there's no reason why you can't do simple strength work and core work. I mean, core's been hijacked by the fitness industry. Core generally, when we're talking about the deep set abdominal, intra-abdominal pressure, lower back and glute strength. So yeah, time off your feet does not have to be detrimental if you're a runner to your running performance. If you use that time wisely and come back 6 weeks to 2 months later with a much stronger core, lower back and glutes, then you'll just fly into your running, and you'll probably find your efficiency and your speed and your injury prevention will be great.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, good luck with that surgery, Kate, and hope that bunion clears up a treat, because I know how painful they can be. So then I just want to catch up, because you'll find this funny, Adam. Rob Jordan has come back about thank you for answering the question about the heels. He says, cheers, matey. He says he's on the way to the lakes immediately. And he also says he runs 6 to 8 times a week, as well as working on his strength. What do you think about running 6 to 8 times a week, considering how we started the show?
It's dependent on the individual. When we started the show, the way I sort of posted it and spoke about it is for the general runner. We don't know what miles he's running, we don't know what age he is, we don't know what level he's running at, what distance he's putting in, what weight he is. So it's very hard to say. 6 to 8 times a week is obviously on one day. If he's doing that 8, he's doing a double run on that day. That's a lot of work going in. If he's working on his strength as well, that's fantastic. I would I would say he's possibly being coached here as well if he's running at that level, or he's self-coaching. But
He started running in August last year to lose
wow.
weight, and he's just really, really enthusiastic.
Okay, so my honest opinion would be just pull back on the reins slightly.
I do
There's,
keep telling him that, but he won't listen to me, so that's why I thought I'll ask Adam and get Adam to tell him.
there's a big tendency. I see a lot of runners who present in clinic who started, that they've maybe slowly got out of shape. They haven't been doing a lot of exercise. They've put weight on. They think, right, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to start running. This will help me lose weight. It will. And then they tend to find that, you know what, underneath this body that hasn't done a lot, my lungs work, my heart's work, I'm strong. I'm actually a good runner. The enthusiasm takes over. As the weight starts to drop off, when you see that difference, it's more inspiration to keep moving forward. We can often get a bit blinkered and carried away. It will catch up with you again. So I'm pleased he's doing strength work, and I'm pleased he's running and enjoying it. But I would be tempted to back that away. That's a heck of a lot of running. And most people who run that sort of distance regularly, or that amount of frequency, will end up with an injury sooner or later. So I'd probably back away a little bit.
That's good advice. So you hear that, Rob? Adam's telling you too. Fantastic that everyone's enjoying running, but yeah, we don't have to run that often. I've got a really good question now from Andrew Knox that I mentioned earlier, and you mentioned it earlier a little bit. He wants to know, he sits at his desk a lot. We all sit at our desks a lot if you're based in an office, and he wants to know what things you can do to just alleviate any chances of injury from sitting a lot.
Okay, so if we're talking upper body, when we tend to find we sit a lot at a desk, we internally rotate, so we round shoulder, we come round, so we're sitting over the desk typing all the time. So just trying to every now and again stopping, so for the upper body, and literally shrugging up and then back and dropping the shoulder blades back down. We can literally turn left to right. We can sit on our hands so we stay in place and turn as far as we can one way, as far as we can the other. We can do rocks, we can do rolls with the head, just nice and slowly, because you can get a bit lightheaded or dizzy doing that. Pushing the hands out to the front, stretching around the back, across, shoulders. The biggest issue is sitting. Sitting is slowly killing the human race. We lay at night in that fetal position, so we're sort of bent up at the waist. We get up and eat our breakfast, sit in fetal position. We drive to work, fetal position. We sit at a desk, fetal. We come home, so it's just fetal, fetal, fetal. And then when we're running, we're tightening the same muscle groups as we would be in that seated position. The rec fem, the quads at the front, the hip flexors specifically. What I tend to do with a lot of people who sit at a desk a lot is ask them to get up, however, regardless, they may feel a little bit stupid with their work colleagues around them if they're in a bigger office, but going into a deep sit squat. So standing up with our legs a little bit wider than hips, feet pointing out to sort of between 5 to 1, 10 to 2, and then sitting down into a squat all the way down, and sitting down so your bum's dropping down there, trying to keep the feet flat on the floor. And then in that position, pushing your arms into the knees and trying to push the knees away to the side a little bit. So just getting into a deep sit squat and stretching everything out. Again, standing up, stretching the hamstrings, stretching the quads, just going up and down on the toes a little bit. So we're just working the calves and that posterior muscle. Often just simply rotating. I've said to people who work in an office environment before, I think that the water cooler, the water fountain was out in the corridor. So just every hour they would just have a cup and they would get up from there, walk round. It was maybe a 2 or 3 minute walk, but they were just moving and coming back again. So it's common sense, really, the basics.
Yeah, just keep getting up, keep moving, and if you've got one of those balls, get it on your foot under the desk.
Yeah, there's no reason why. Get the shoes off and just roll on the ball there. You can put the ball under the buttock, under the hamstring on a desk, so you can sort of self-massage as well.
Yeah, when I worked at Trail Running Magazine, I was in an office, obviously, and times would just go by when I was just like, oh, I just really need to stretch. So I'd just like do a down facing dog in the
Yeah,
office or like do a plank or like a cobra. And the people on Birdwatching Magazine were like, what the hell is she doing? Like the people on all the other magazines that weren't sports magazines were like, oh, she is weird. So I just wish it was more normal for a person to just go and do some
nice.
yoga poses. I wish there was
Yeah,
a room like or a cubicle or something in each office where people would just go and do some yoga for 5 minutes at a time. But it's just not the norm, is it, in the UK?
and in my ideal world, um, it wouldn't be frowned upon in a mixed office like that to do that. We'd all do it. I would love if it was in Sked. I mean, often it is in the States and Australia. They have time set aside, and as you say, there'll be in most big office suites, there'll be a small studio, just a stretch studio. So putting together a simple yoga flow, as you say, that works on lumbar, thoracic, C-spine, shoulder movement, hips, hamstrings, anything you can do. But yeah, unfortunately, as you say, I'm studying cues in a coffee shop or at the bank, and I'm stretching my leg up, and
Yeah.
I get time. They just think I'm weird too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's just start the revolution, everyone. Or let's all stretch. Whenever in a queue, calf raises and drops, bit of a hamstring stretch.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'd all live a lot longer, wouldn't we?
The way forward, yes, we would.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. Just got a few more questions. We've got a question from Conrad Anderson that I'd like to get to. And we've done Andrew Knox's sitting at the desk question. There's a question, so we'll do Conrad's first, and then I've got a question from Kev JH about CBD oil, which is interesting. It's that cannabis oil thing. But first, Conrad's question is he wants to know how to relax and stretch the there's lots of muscles here that I don't really know what they are. You'll know what they are. Sartorius, gracilis. This sounds like a dinosaur. Semitendinosus tendons. That's surely a dinosaur, and connecting muscle. So how to stretch them and strengthen them. He has a connection point issue below the medial knee. His MCL and bursa seem good. So this seems to be a man who who definitely knows his muscle groups.
This is all on one. This is all on the same leg, I'm guessing.
I'm guessing yes. Yeah.
I think he said adductors, didn't he? So
he said sartorius, gracilis, semitendinosus tendons, and that's it.
Yeah. So his sartorius is a muscle that runs across the top of the quads and round. Gracilis is an adductor.
So it's like a groin area.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I do know this. He did tell me that he had a groin injury at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
At some point, he's had there's a groin injury there. It's very, very hard to stretch out a groin injury. You tend to find that the tears, most of the ones I've seen present in clinic and at pro level, are usually at the tendon attachment to the bone. So you often find that you do need your physio, your sports rehab, or your sports masseur to get in there, drop in a little bit deeper and do the work that's necessary. That in combination with stretching with the medical professional and stretching at home. The semitendinosus is one of the, along with the bicep femoris and the semimembranosus, they're the three hamstrings at the back of the leg. There's varied stretches to do, but the one I mentioned at the start is probably one of the greatest, where we stand, we take the injured leg up onto the work surface in the kitchen is an ideal height, but maybe too high to start with. So you can put it on a chair to begin with, and then you just put books under it or things under it to lift it up a little bit. Your support leg is at 10 to the hour, and then you just lean forward, run your hands down the leg, over the knee towards your shin as far as you go, and you'll start to feel the hamstring initiate the stretch. And then physically, when you've got hold of that leg, you twist it one way and twist it the other way. So A and B is 1, and you would do that 20 times. You would then just slightly bend the leg you're stretching, and then you would turn that support leg round from 10 to the hour to 12 o'clock, and then straighten that leg again, and you'll feel already a different pull on a separate head in the hammies. And then you would repeat that process again, leaning forward, initiate the lengthways stretch, then physically take the leg and put it through that. So it's a much more functional stretch. So that will help. But again, in conjunction with having therapy, professional work, they'll be able to work, because I think he was saying that it had been identified actually in the tendon attachment point. they'll be able to do some deeper work into there and then do a lot of stretching with him on the plinth on the couch. So it's a generic answer because, again, without seeing the individual and the condition, it's very, very hard. But he said he'd got some, did he say medially he was okay? There was a knee issue, I think he said.
A connection point issue below the medial knee.
Right, okay then. So again, it's in an ideal world, the issue is that we often get a diagnosis, but then due to time constraints and financial constraints, we don't always continue to get the amount of treatment we need. I'm a big believer in trying to give the individual as much information as they can. So if they're a sponge and they want more, I give them more. So the more that I can give them to go away with and do themselves, the more they will do. And again, it's an understanding point that if the practitioner takes time to make sure that the patient understands how the injury happened, why we're doing what we're doing in clinic and what they can do outside, there's probably more chance they'll do it as well.
That's a really good point. So everyone, listen to your physio, listen to Adam, and we'll all get better a lot quicker. There's a really interesting comment just come up from Carol J, who says that she suspects lots of runners wait a couple of weeks after they're injured and then start again as they think it feels okay, and then you get a relapse and a cycle repeats. So she's getting a proper rehab plan for her glute tear. But no running is a bit of a pain for her though. And Conrad says thank you very much for the extra stretching ideas, and he'll get a helper to get in there as well. So he says thank you so much for that, Adam. Andrew Knox also says thank you, Adam. He needs to get squatting. So yeah, tons of thanks for you here on the comments and reactions. And we've just got time for one final question in the last 5 minutes, and that's from Kev JH, and he wants to know if CBD oil and creams can benefit you, runners and running injuries, I suppose. Can you just explain what they are for anyone who doesn't know? Because I'm not fully sure what they even are.
Yeah, it's the cannabis derivative oils. So, I personally have never utilised them. I know a lot of patients who use them. I think originally there was a lot of people, especially in the surrounding area in Cumbria, there's a lot of people suffering with depressive states or pain which was coming from cancers, and around here that's where it seemed to start, but now it's gone through more into and being picked up more mainstream just for general well-being. You can have the one that's put under the tongue, so you put a few drops underneath the tongue, or you can have transdermal oil that you'll rub it, a cream that you'd rub into the skin and it soaks through. I'm not sure, I'm not fully aware of any up-to-date scientific research on it. And for me, it's split 50-50, that I've had some patients who use it and swear by it and say that it has their pain. They've done nothing else differently, but the pain has dropped utilising that. And it usually goes hand in hand. People who've noticed the pain relief also state that they are getting a much better, deeper sleep. Other people have tried it before and have just said they haven't noticed anything at all. So it's a 50-50 split in clinic. I personally haven't utilised it. It's not something that I know enough about. I don't tell patients to try this. They'll often come to me and ask. And I've always been of the opinion, if something works for the individual and it's beneficial, then as long as it's not having a dire side effect, then utilise it. So there doesn't seem to be at the moment current research saying there's any negative effects to it, but again, it's still very early in its use, and we don't often find if there is any negative effects until 2 or 3 years down the line. So again, I'm not super qualified really to say much more about it, but it's down to the individual and possibly a bit of research from the individual. And if you can, there are forums out there online where you can speak to people and you'll probably get a lot more information.
That's fantastic. And I'm so sorry, but I've just found 2 more questions from patrons, which was on the previous scheduling, because we did schedule this twice. I'm so sorry. I just must ask them really quickly, because Guy Greatorex says he got an overuse injury in his knee 3 weeks ago, and it's painful to run on, but just a niggle in day-to-day life. Is there any exercises he can do to speed up the healing process? He's stretching and icing and foam rolling a lot and cycling on the bike. I think it has alleviated, and I know he did get out for a run the other day. But yeah, he just wants some advice on knee injuries. He thinks it might be overuse because of running too much.
Right. So if it's been a diagnosed overuse injury by a medical professional, I'm guessing he may have been given advice. If he hasn't, or he's just asking for extra, again, there's so many overuse injuries to the knee without more specific. It's quite generic. However, rest, great. That's what he seems to be doing. Back away. If running is aggravating it, we need to back away at the moment. We need to, if it's the knee specifically, if you present it in clinic like that, the first thing I do is check the integrity, and I'd want to make sure that the cartilage of the meniscus, everything was okay there, that the ligaments, so ACL, PCL, MCL, LCL, everything was as it should be, that there was no damage to the knee and the integral workings and strength of the knee. If that was clear, then it's looking at soft tissue, and he's probably been running too much. So we could have imbalances there. So getting the glutes firing, because they're probably not. Trying to get more posterior chain strength, so hamstring and glutes. Trying to loosen off the quads as well. You often get a lot of people presenting clinic, and when we've looked at the knee special tests, there's absolutely nothing wrong there. The integrity's fine. So that really does point to the soft tissue. Foam rolling will help massively, but again, foam rolling is the second best option to treatment. If you can get a professional to get in there and do some deep tissue work, it probably alleviate it quicker.
So that's fantastic. So the start of the program, the exercises there for Guy, and get a proper diagnosis on it for sure. He also wants tips on how to stop negative thoughts, because like we all run because we want to get outside and we want to. Well, it's good for the mental health as well as the physical health. So what can you do if you are injured and you just can't get out running? How do you stop negativity?
If I could find the psychological switch in a runner's head, it'd be amazing. I've been looking for like 20 years and I struggled. They're in a lot of ways their own worst enemies, because they know that they should be doing this mobility and strength work and prehab work, but they don't. And then they get injured, and that injury, often they run through it thinking it'll get better and it doesn't. And then they can be out of running for a long time. And when your social circle and your friends and meeting up for a coffee is after the run, and food after the whole social circle. If you aren't running, you don't really want to just meet them for a meal after they've been for a run. So your whole social world implodes. You can get down, and I've seen people get manically depressed to the point that 3 or 4 weeks after I've told them that they won't run for 6 months, they're literally on antidepressants. So it's utilizing, as we said to the other patron, that time you've got. If you can't run because there's an injury and you've been told you can't, then you focus on the other areas. I know that getting into a gym and doing Pilates or yoga or stretch or mobility work and strength work doesn't give you that same buzz, but you've got to try and focus on that plan so that we're getting stronger in the pillar. So the hip strength and stability, core strength and stability, shoulder strength, stability. Work on all of this so that when you come back to the running, you'll be a better version of you were. That's the greatest thing I can say. So stay positive by training a little bit differently, knowing that training will lead you to being a better, more efficient runner. And hopefully you should be injury proofed as well next time.
Very sensible advice. And you could also print out some of your favourite running pictures and put them all up on your wall to just remind you of what you're trying to get back to as well.
It's as you say, it's running is incredibly beneficial for mental, emotional, spiritual state. It really is. So when we take it away, we can suffer. So anything you can do to focus on that. But I tend to find that you can't run, so focus on the other areas that you maybe haven't been focusing on when you're running, which will actually lead to being a better runner.
Yeah, so all the more reason to drop down a run, and like don't run 3 or 4 times a week and do your strength session, all the things we were talking about at the start of the program. That just reinforces it really for me. And then I promise this is the final question now. So Rennie Feint says she has her first 50k coming up. She'd be interested to know more about appropriate soft tissue work to stay loose before and after a race. For example, should she foam roll or use a percussion massage device? Oh, what's that? On the morning of the race. How close to the race should she get her last deep tissue massage, and how soon after? Wow, that's a big question.
So it's a 50k race, so she's been training to run 50k trail run, which is great. It sounds like she's been having regular treatment. You would like to think that whoever's been giving the regular treatment would have been advising how often. So as I say, in the run up to a 50k race, in an ideal world, when the training is at its highest point, when we're at the peak of our training, I would like to see, if possible, once a week. if not once a fortnight or once a month. You don't want very, very deep work directly before the race within the week to 10 days, because you can generate some tenderness and soreness. So in a week before, I would say just general flush out. So a lighter, faster treatment just to flush everything through and make sure that we're in good form. I wouldn't say there's any need to foam roller that week before. You should be in good condition. So if you're running on Saturday, a week before, you might have your final flush through massage. There's no reason that you couldn't have. There's often at the races on the day, once you've completed, got your medal, sat down, there's often masseurs around there in some form. There's no reason why you can't have a treatment then, and they know that having just run 50k, you're pretty sore and tender. So they'll just do a flush through again, just to try, because you've just stopped all of a sudden, just to flush everything through, get the blood pumping round, and then just, I would say, possibly the day after that, I might get in the pool, get in the swimming pool and just go through some mobility work, even just pool walking or pool running. Maybe 2 to 3 days after that, I'd look at going in and getting some work done. And you could get in then quite deep, relatively deep, and do the work.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that helps Rinny doing her first 50k. Massive good luck to you. And that is all of the questions. Wow, we actually got through them all. That has been absolutely fantastic, Adam. I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of everybody watching. Lots of people have been watching right now, but I know loads of people will be watching afterwards as well, and they will be really benefiting from all of that advice that you've given, whatever their injury might be. So yeah, it just seems to be, don't run as much, do more strength and conditioning work, see a physio a bit more often if you can. And I will be certainly coming to see you in the lakes a little bit later on in the year, and we'll be putting together some rehab and injury prevention exercises and routines that people can follow in the comfort of their own home. So the advice does not stop here.
If there's a minute, the one thing that I try to get people to think about is what we call a performance pyramid. And there's 3 blocks to it. At the bottom, the wide foundation is movement. And that's, if you like, governed by mobility, range of motion at a joint, and stability, the stability of that joint. Above that, you'll have performance, which is your strength, your power, your coordination, your agility, your speed. That then leads to the top little point, which is your sport specificity. So for a runner, the ability to run fast up a hill or get the poles out and push up the hill, to run efficiently and fast over the flat, and run efficiently and technically descend downhill. You will never be a great runner or an injury-free runner if you don't have that mobility base. You need to have mobility at the ankle, the knee, the hip, into the lumbar spine, the thoracic and the shoulders. And to be honest, 99.9% of the runners I see don't have it. So every runner I come across would be a better runner and run faster, more efficiently, and with less injury if, again, they back away from the running and work on that mobility base. A perfect example of someone who's done that, a legend at the moment, a good friend of mine, I've worked on him. I met him when he first came over here from Ireland, Paul Tierney. Think of the 2:14 record he's just done.
Yeah.
Paul has spent a phenomenal amount of time on mobility drills and strength work. Don't get me wrong, he runs, but everybody saw Paul and they were like, my God, we need to run more, this is amazing. And it's actually, if you could see his other strength, it's like I said with Mo Farah, Paul has done, every day he's working for an hour and a half, 2 hours on mobility. The guy is throwing around 24, 26, 28 kilogram kettlebells regularly. He's phenomenally strong. So having that mobility base allows him to build the strength. That with, he's slightly genetically gifted as well, but those big bases allow him to run efficiently. So
and not get injured, because what was he running for 5 or 6 days doing that Wainwright's challenge? 214 peaks in the Lake District he covered, beating that record from Steve Birkinshaw.
Record, yeah. So it's about having that mobility. It's very much that if you think of, are we okay for time? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm fine for time. It's purely your choice.
No, don't worry, that's fine. Mobility, when we're running, a runner needs to learn as well with the ability to diagnose themselves. Is that a niggle that I can run through, or is that an injury on the way? That comes with time.
Yeah.
That comes with experience. But liken it to this, a runner has to be able to differentiate. If you were driving the car and every revolution of the wheel, you're driving down the motorway, it's bang, 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 bang. You don't turn the stereo up to hide the noise. What you would do is go to the garage and get it sorted. Runners tend to just keep running until they have this pain, and then they don't pay heed to it. It's like, I'm just going to turn the internal stereo up. I'll use paracetamol, ibuprofen, I'll hide it, and then it becomes worse. So to be a better runner, without one word of a lie, run a little less. Get your mobility, then build your strength, and then your running will take care of itself.
And it's funny what runners will spend money on as well, because we've said it is expensive, but yet people will pay £150 for a race, they'll pay £150 for a pair of shoes, or perhaps a backpack or a waterproof. They'll pay for their car, they'll pay £500 for a car to be repaired or whatever, and they'll just be like, oh, it's just what it is. But yet we won't spend £30 a month on ourselves to maintain our bodies in tip-top condition. It's really funny the way the mind works, isn't it?
You've hit it there. If I look at the average ultra runner in the lakes, there could be a £300 watch, £400 watch, compression garments of a few £100, shorts, compression vests, packs, as you say. It can be phenomenal, over £1,000 worth of equipment in a push to run faster. The one thing they actually are looking at is their own engine, their own mechanics. So if you like, the bodywork of that car looks amazing. It's head to foot in compressed sport and Salomon and you name it. But you take the bodywork off and the glutes aren't firing. They aren't working. There's more strength at the front of the left leg than the right leg. The right calf's tight. And that is very much like saying, I'm going to get in my car today and drive it 100 miles an hour as fast as I can to get from A to B. But I haven't serviced it. The tyres are flat. There's no oil in it. The spring's broken. The thread's gone. So, yeah, it's trying to take the blinkers off with a runner and get them to see that the best thing they can spend time and money on really is their own body. Because if you can get that moving efficiently, it's that'll, one, get you running quicker, crossing the line with a smile on your face and pain-free. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I think you've converted quite a few people. Let me just read you these little thank you messages from a few people. And also Tim Croft has said, can you put a link up for Adam's practice? So I've just put your Facebook page on there. Is that the right link to use for everybody?
Yeah. What I can do is I can give you some more information as well, that if anybody wants to get in contact, they can.
Brilliant.
If anybody in the lakes, they're welcome to come and see me. And then obviously we're going to meet up later in the year and we can put some videos together. And
yeah, people will know where to find you.
Yeah.
And in the YouTube description below, I'll put your links, which you're going to send me as well, so anyone can look there. But yeah, so many people have put thank you. Tony Madsen says thanks for a very interesting session. See you next time. Conrad says, Adam and Claire, thank you. Great live casting. Guy Greytrex, thanks for answering. Great advice. Tim Croft, fantastic tips. Many thanks. Kurt Steege says, thanks so much. Great show. Di Wilson said, awesome advice. Definitely going to watch this again for all the tips. Cheers. And Abby Norman said, thanks so much, Adam. Such a great session. Loved listening to all the advice. And John Gardner said that we had to work extra hard to bring Adam's link to life, Adam's talk to life, because we had a few problems on the live broadcasting, but I'm really glad that we got them sorted. And Neve says, great show. And she's going to have to re-listen again to take it all in. And Tom Avery says, thank you, sir, as well. So it's just absolutely brilliant. And like, I've been writing notes myself as I've been going along. I've got loads of stuff written down here on this piece of paper now. So yeah, I think we're all going to have to just take stock really and just implement a little bit of your advice bit by bit into our running seasons. And I'm looking forward to.
It's that simple. Run a little less and put some mobility and strength work in, and everything else will take care of itself.
Yep. Well, hopefully I'm going to be able to help everybody watching this channel by going and visiting you and doing some strength work routines with you, so people will have some idea of what to start doing. So yeah, thanks so much, Adam. It's been absolutely great to chat to you. I'm going to end the live broadcast now, but we'll still be on Skype, so don't go away immediately.
No problem.
But thank you so much to everybody for watching. It's been absolutely great having you ask all your questions to Adam, and I think he's been an absolutely fantastic guest. And again, if you want to be more involved with the patron community and get your questions answered as a priority, then just look me up, patreon.com/wildgingerrunning. Yeah, that's it. Just /Wild Ginger Running. And also look up Adam on Facebook. Just go onto Facebook and type in Adam Smith injury and rehab, and you'll find his phone number and his clinic details all there. If you are in the Lake District, definitely is worth giving him a shout, I would say. So thank you so much, Adam, and hopefully we'll get you on again, and I'm looking forward to working with you later in the year.
My pleasure. It's been lovely to answer the questions and to get involved and be a little bit more interactive with runners. It's been great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, good night, everybody, from me and Adam.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. I hope you're